Opening scene. Soft ambient sound of a ticking clock, the faint hum of a refrigerator. My name is Evelyn Parker, and until last month, I thought I'd lived a good, simple life. A cozy house in a quiet American neighborhood, roses blooming in the front yard, and a daughter I believed loved me as much as I loved her. But sometimes, it only takes one moment, one sound, to shatter everything you thought was real. That sound for me was a voice message. It was a Wednesday morning. The sun had barely risen. The sky outside my kitchen window looked washed out and pale like an old photograph. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through messages on my phone, when a new notification blinked. Voice message from Laura. Laura, my daughter, my pride and joy. I smiled without thinking. She rarely sent voice messages. I thought maybe she'd forgotten her keys again, or wanted me to babysit the kids this weekend. I pressed play. At first, I heard only her breathing, a little sharp, like she'd been talking fast before recording. Then came her voice, and the words that froze me. "I can't stand having my mom here anymore," she said. "She's messy, forgetful, and she's just exhausting." Ethan and I talked. We found a nursing home about 20 minutes away. They said it's affordable, $900 a month, and we could move her there quietly. I mean, it's not like she'd really know the difference, I blinked, my hand trembling slightly. That couldn't be Laura. Not my Laura. But then she kept talking. "I already talked to Darren at the county office. He said there's a way to transfer her house title into our name. Just need her to sign a few papers. She won't even realize what's happening. By next month, it'll be done." The coffee cup slipped from my hand. It hit the floor and shattered, pieces of porcelain bouncing across the tiles. Coffee splattered against the cabinets like dark raindrops. I didn't even flinch. I just stood there listening, heart hammering in my chest. "By next month," she repeated with a small laugh. "We'll finally have some peace." Peace. I stared out the window, past the soft sway of the curtains, past the bird perched on the fence. That word echoed in my head like an insult. This house wasn't just four walls. It was where my late husband Tom and I had built our life. He'd laid the foundation himself 38 years ago. We'd painted the kitchen together, argued over curtain colors, planted the first rose bush. He used to say, "Evie, this house will always be your safe place, even after I'm gone." He'd been gone 15 years now, and the only person I thought I could still trust was trying to take it away. I sat down slowly, replaying the message again. Once, twice. Each time her words sounded colder, her laugh more unfamiliar. How long had she been planning this? How many dinners had she smiled through, pretending everything was fine, while secretly preparing to betray me? My throat felt dry. My hands trembled. But as the shock began to fade, something else replaced it. Something stronger. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. Laura thought she could manipulate me. The old lady who forgets her glasses, who moves a little slower now, who still asks for help with her phone. But she forgot one thing. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, lights off, listening to the quiet creaks of the house Tom built. And I made a promise to myself. If Laura wanted to play games with paperwork, then I'd show her exactly who taught her to play smart in the first place. Because the next time she came to visit, I would be ready. Soft instrumental music fades in, nostalgic, bittersweet. The sound of rain gently tapping against a window. The morning after I heard Laura's voice message, I woke up before dawn. I couldn't stay in bed. The silence of the house felt too heavy. Every creak, every sigh of the old wooden floor reminded me that this home carried our family's history and my daughter's betrayal. I wrapped myself in Tom's old flannel robe, the one he wore every morning when making coffee, and walked toward the kitchen. The smell of roses drifted in through the cracked window. It used to calm me. Now it just made me ache. I sat at the table and looked around. Every inch of this place had a memory attached to it. My memories, not hers. The faded wallpaper we picked in 1989, the chipped cabinet handle Tom had promised to fix, The pencil marks on the doorframe where Laura's height was recorded every birthday. That wall still had her name written in faded marker. Laura, age 10, wants to be a nurse. My lips trembled. What happened to that little girl? She used to rush into my arms after school, her backpack bouncing, showing me every gold star and drawing she'd made. She used to whisper, "Mom, you're my best friend." Now, that same little girl, grown into a woman with expensive handbags and too much pride, was plotting to put me in a nursing home and steal the roof over my head. But sitting there in the quiet, I reminded myself of something my own mother used to say. Don't fight fire with anger, Evie. Fight it with patience. Anger burns fast. Patience burns forever. So, I started to plan, not out of rage, but out of purpose. Flashback, the foundation of strength. When Tom and I bought this land, we didn't have much. He worked construction. I cleaned houses. We saved every spare dollar for years just to buy these few acres. We built the house piece by piece, sometimes literally by hand. Tom poured the foundation with 2 friends on a freezing November morning. I painted the living room walls at night while Laura slept in a bassinet beside me. We didn't have a lot, but we had honor, and when Tom passed, I promised myself I'd keep that alive. For Laura, for the grandkids, for his memory. Maybe that's why her betrayal hurt more than anything. It wasn't just about a house. It was about values, the ones she'd forgotten. A plan in the making. That day, I pulled out Tom's old lockbox from under the bed. Inside were our home documents, his will, and a few photographs I hadn't seen in years. One of them stopped me. It was a picture of Laura at 16, smiling, covered in paint, helping Tom fix the porch railing. On the back, in Tom's handwriting, it said, "She's got your stubbornness, Evie." "Use it wisely, kid," I smiled, despite everything. That was the thing. She did get it from me, which meant if she wanted to play hard, I knew exactly how she thought. I went into my office, a small corner room filled with books, receipts, and family albums, and turned on the old desktop computer. It wheezed to life. I opened a new folder and named it The Garden Project. But in reality, it wasn't about gardening at all. It was about gathering every piece of evidence I needed to protect what was mine. I started by printing out copies of my property deed, tax records, and utility bills, anything that proved my ownership. Then I emailed my friend Sarah, who'd worked at the county clerk's office for 30 years. She knew every legal form like the back of her hand. That same afternoon, she called. "Evie, I got your message. What's going on?" "I think Laura's trying to transfer my house behind my back," I said quietly. "Oh, honey," Sarah's voice softened. "Do you have proof?" "A voicemail." "Then don't you worry. We'll make sure she can't do a thing without your say-so." Sarah explained how I could legally freeze any property title changes for 6 months under a fraud prevention claim. She even offered to file it for me discreetly. By the time we hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Control. Evening reflection. That night I sat in the living room, staring at Tom's old armchair. The air felt different, heavier, but alive. I whispered into the quiet, "You'd be proud of me, Tom. I'm not letting her take this from us." A soft breeze drifted through the curtains, making the lamp flicker. Maybe it was just the wind. Or maybe, just maybe, it was him, saying he heard me. Then I made another promise. I won't fight her with anger. I'll fight her with wisdom and love. And when she realizes what she's done, I'll make sure she understands that this home wasn't just mine. It was supposed to be ours. I didn't know it then, but that was the night everything began to shift. Because while Laura was busy planning to take everything from me, I was quietly planning to teach her everything she'd forgotten. Soft piano music fades in, melancholic but calm, the sound of birds outside a half-open window. The next few weeks were quiet, too quiet. Laura started visiting more often, suddenly calling every other day, offering to help with bills and handle the paperwork. On the surface, she was the perfect daughter, but I knew better. I could see the way her eyes darted around the living room, scanning the mail on the table, glancing at the documents on my desk. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at what was mine, so I played my role. I let my hands tremble a little more when I poured tea. I asked her to repeat things, even when I'd heard them perfectly well. I forgot where I put my reading glasses, though they were in my lap the whole time. She thought she was watching me fall apart, but in truth, I was watching her unravel. A conversation with sweet poison. One Saturday afternoon, Laura came by with a box of pastries. Her smile was wide, too wide. It was the kind of smile people wear when they've already decided what they want from you. "Hey, Mom," she said, kissing my cheek. "Thought I'd bring you your favorite, lemon Danish." "Thank you, sweetheart," I said softly, careful to sound slow, tired. "You're too kind." She sat down, crossing her legs. "I was thinking, Mom, maybe we should take care of your paperwork soon. You know, just in case something happens. I'd hate to be unprepared." I looked at her with blank eyes. "Paperwork?" "Yeah," she said lightly, stirring her coffee. "Things like property and legal documents. I know how stressful those can be for you now." I smiled faintly. "Oh, don't you worry, dear. I've already taken care of it." Her hand froze mid-stir, just for a second. Then she laughed it off. "Oh, that's great. I didn't realize you'd already done it." "Oh, yes," I said, taking a slow sip of coffee. "I even had Sarah from the county office help me." Such a sweetheart. That one. Laura blinked. That was the first crack, a tiny flicker in her confident face. I leaned back, pretending to sigh. "You know, I'm getting old, but I can still keep up with the important things. Tom always said, 'Evie, don't let anyone make decisions for you. Not even me.'" She smiled, but I saw her jaw tighten. The hidden trap. That night, after Laura left, I opened my laptop and went to the folder labeled The Garden Project. Inside were scanned copies of every signed document, every recorded voicemail, and now, a new folder called Daughter Visits. I'd started recording our conversations on my phone, not out of malice, but out of necessity. If she was planning something behind my back, I needed proof of how she treated me, how she spoke when she thought I was too frail to notice. Each recording told a story. Her voice, sugar-sweet, but laced with impatience. "Mom, you really shouldn't handle all this alone. You're lucky Ethan's so understanding about helping with your house. It'd be easier for everyone if you just let us take care of it." Every word was a small piece of evidence, a thread that, when pulled, would unravel her entire plan. I also reached out to Mr. Carter, my old lawyer. He'd known Tom and me for decades. When I told him what was happening, he simply said, "Evelyn, let's tighten your ship. We'll make sure no one can touch a thing without your explicit consent." We added a clause to my property, a special condition requiring 2 legal witnesses for any future changes. It meant even if Laura forged my signature, it wouldn't hold up. The trap was set. All that was left was for her to step right into it. The dinner invitation. A few days later, Laura called. "Mom, Ethan and I want to have you over for dinner," she said. "Maybe talk about some family stuff." "Family stuff," I repeated, smiling. "That sounds lovely." What she didn't know was that I had already prepared for that dinner. I printed copies of my legal protection documents, and on the back of one of them, just for my own satisfaction, I wrote 4 words in blue ink. "You taught me well." I placed them in my purse beside my phone. When the day came, I wore my softest sweater, brushed my silver hair neatly, and put on a gentle smile. To her, I looked like a tired old woman ready to hand over her life. But beneath that calm surface, I was sharper than I'd ever been. Night before the confrontation. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from fear, but from focus. I sat at my bedroom window, looking out over the yard Tom and I built. The porch lights cast a warm circle over the rose bushes, still blooming against the early autumn chill. "Tomorrow," I whispered, "you'll see who your mother really is." Because tomorrow's dinner wasn't just a family gathering. It was the stage for a lesson 20 years in the making. One that would remind my daughter that love and manipulation cannot live in the same heart. I closed my eyes and smiled. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully, because I knew the calm was ending, and the storm was mine to command. Sound design, soft ticking clock, gentle transition into a dinner table ambiance, forks, quiet chatter, low jazz playing in the background. That evening, the air was heavy, the kind of heaviness that comes before a thunderstorm. Laura greeted me at the door, her smile tight and practiced. "Mom, you look great. Come in." Ethan was at the table opening a bottle of red wine. He nodded politely, maybe too politely. His eyes didn't quite meet mine. I stepped inside, taking a deep breath. Roast chicken, garlic potatoes, apple pie cooling on the counter. Everything looked perfect, almost like they were trying too hard. "It's been too long since we've had dinner together," I said softly, setting my purse beside the chair. "Yeah," Laura replied, laughing nervously. "We've just been busy." The conversation begins. For a while, it was almost normal. We talked about the weather, her job, the new store downtown. But I could see it, the tension in her shoulders, the impatience in her tone. Finally, after dessert, she made her move. "Mom," she began, carefully placing her fork down. "There's something important I need to talk to you about." "Of course, dear," I said, pretending to sip my tea. She exchanged a look with Ethan before continuing. "You know, with everything going on, we've been worried about you living alone in that big house." "Oh," I tilted my head. "Why's that?" "You're not getting any younger, Mom. You forget things sometimes. The bills, doctor's appointments." She smiled sweetly. "We just want to help." "It's time to make some decisions together," Ethan added. "Maybe you should consider letting us manage things for you. We could take care of the property, the taxes, the paperwork." My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from control. I let the silence stretch just long enough. Then I whispered, "Manage things, meaning my house?" Laura's smile didn't falter, but her tone softened. "It's not like that, Mom. We just think it would be easier for you. You can focus on resting, on enjoying life." The trap springs shut. I looked down at my tea, swirling it slowly. Then, calmly, I reached into my purse and pulled out an envelope. "Laura," I said quietly, "before we talk about who should manage what, why don't you read this first?" She frowned, confused, taking the papers. Her eyes scanned the first page. Her color began to drain. "What? What is this?" she stammered. "That," I said, still calm, "is an updated property protection order. Mr. Carter helped me file it last week." Ethan leaned forward, squinting. "What does it mean?" "It means," I said evenly, "that no one, not even family, can alter, transfer, or claim ownership of my house without 2 legal witnesses and my direct approval, in person." I smiled gently. "Even if someone tries to help me out of kindness." The silence was deafening. Laura's hands trembled slightly as she turned the page. She tried to laugh it off, but her voice cracked. "Mom, this isn't necessary. We were just what?" I interrupted softly, still smiling. "Trying to protect me? Or trying to protect my house?" The evidence, I reached again into my purse, this time pulling out my phone. "Do you remember our talk last week?" I asked, tapping play on the screen. Laura froze. Her own voice filled the room, calm, calculating. "If Mom signs the power of attorney papers, we'll have full control. Carol said it'll look perfectly legal." The blood drained from her face. Ethan looked at her in shock. "You recorded that?" "Yes," I said gently. "And the 2 before it. I thought my memory was failing, remember? Turns out it's sharp as ever." She stood up suddenly, eyes wide. "Mom, how could you?" "How could I?" My voice was soft, but my words hit hard. "How could you, Laura? I gave you everything I had, my time, my money, my heart, and you turned that love into leverage." Her lip quivered. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it?" I whispered. "Greed? Fear? Or did you just forget who raised you?" Ethan quietly stood up and muttered, "I think I'll give you two a minute," and left the room. The truth hurts. For a long moment, Laura said nothing. Her eyes glistened, her voice breaking. "You don't understand, Mom," she whispered. "I was scared. The mortgage, the bills. Ethan's been drowning in debt. I thought if we could just take from me," I finished for her. "Lie to me. Pretend I was losing my mind." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Oh, sweetheart," I said softly, standing up and touching her face. "You didn't just hurt me. You made me question everything I ever taught you." There was silence, only the sound of the clock ticking, like a heartbeat counting the distance between two souls. A mother's lesson. "I'm not angry," I said finally. "Just disappointed. I spent my life teaching you strength, honesty, compassion. But somewhere, you started thinking love meant ownership." Laura sobbed. "I'm sorry, Mom. Please don't hate me." "I could never hate you," I said gently. "But I can choose to protect myself. And maybe in doing that, I'll remind you what integrity looks like." I picked up my purse, adjusted my coat, and headed to the door. Before leaving, I turned back to her. "You once told me I'd grow weak with age," I said softly. "But the truth is, age doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise enough to see who people really are." Then I walked out. The sound of my heels echoed down the hallway like a quiet declaration of freedom. That night, I went home, alone, but no longer afraid. Because I'd reclaimed something far more valuable than a house. I'd reclaimed my dignity. Sound design, soft rain tapping on windows. A slow piano melody begins. Camera pans across an empty living room. Family photos, a flickering candle. Silence. 3 months passed. Autumn had arrived. Leaves turned gold and crimson, drifting down like quiet confessions. The world outside my window looked peaceful, almost forgiving. But inside, my heart still carried the echo of that night. I thought I'd feel relief after walking away. And in some ways I did. But every silence in my house reminded me of Laura's laughter when she was little. Every old photo whispered, "She was yours once." The letter one morning, the mailman dropped a small brown envelope through my door. No return address, just my name, written in shaky, familiar handwriting. I knew before I opened it. Inside was a letter, folded carefully, stained with tears. "Mom, I don't know how to start this. I've written and torn this letter 100 times. You were right. I lost my way. I let fear turn me into someone I don't even recognize." After that night, Ethan and I separated. He said he couldn't handle the guilt, and truthfully, neither could I. I've been going to therapy. I'm trying to rebuild, not the money, but myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope, someday, you'll let me hug you again. Love, always, Laura. My hands trembled. Tears blurred the ink as I read her words again and again. She was broken, but she was trying, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Second chances. Weeks later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Laura standing there. No makeup, no fancy clothes. Just a woman stripped of pretense, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Her eyes searched mine, full of guilt and hope. "Mom," she whispered, "can I come in?" For a long moment, I just looked at her. All the pain, betrayal, and anger surged inside me. And then I saw something else. Not the manipulative woman from before, but my little girl. The one who used to bring me wildflowers and say, "These are for you, Mommy." I stepped aside. "Yes, Laura," I said softly. "Come in." She broke down in tears before I could even close the door. I held her, tightly, silently, like a mother does when her child finally finds their way home. Fire rekindled. We sat for hours that day. No shouting, no excuses, just truth. She told me everything. The debts, the pressure, the shame she felt pretending to be strong. And I listened. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about understanding that even good people can lose their way when darkness whispers too sweetly. I poured her a cup of tea, the same way I used to when she was little, and for the first time in years, we talked, really talked, about life, about choices, about the fragile beauty of redemption. What the neighbors said people in town whispered, of course. They always do. Some said I was foolish to take her back. Others said I was brave. But I didn't care. Because forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It frees you. It takes more strength to let go of bitterness than to hold on to pride. And as weeks turned into months, Laura started visiting more often, helping in the garden, cooking dinner on Sundays. Slowly, quietly, we rebuilt something that wasn't just mother and daughter. It was two women who learned to see each other again. Sound design, gentle wind through trees, a soft acoustic guitar playing in the background. The scene opens with a close-up of the mother's hands holding a small, old photograph, her daughter, Laura, as a child, missing front teeth, holding a wildflower. It had been 6 months since Laura came back, 6 months of quiet mornings, shared meals, and small, mended moments. You'd be surprised how healing doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it's the sound of a coffee cup being placed gently on the table. Sometimes it's just silence, the comfortable kind. Rebuilding trust. One Sunday at a time. Every Sunday, Laura and I cooked together. At first, she was hesitant, afraid to touch the past too much, afraid she'd break something fragile. But slowly, I saw the woman I raised peek through again, the one who used to sing while stirring soup, off-key but full of joy. "You still remember the recipe?" I teased one day. "Barely," she laughed. "But I remember you always burned the first pancake." We laughed until tears rolled down our cheeks. Not sad tears, but the kind that say, we're finding our way back. Letters to the past. One evening, Laura handed me a small box. Inside were letters, all the ones she'd written during those years she avoided me. "I never mailed them," she said. "I was too ashamed." I read them one by one over the next few nights. Each letter was a piece of her heart. Guilt, regret, fear, and longing. Some made me cry. Some made me angry all over again. But in every word, I saw her trying to reach for the light, even when she didn't know how. A visit to the old house. One Saturday, Laura asked me to visit the old family home, the place I'd raised her, the place where laughter once filled the halls, before money and ambition took over. The house was abandoned now. We walked through the empty rooms, dust catching in the sunlight. On one wall, faint crayon marks, Laura, age 6. She traced it with her finger, eyes glistening. "You told me not to draw on the walls," she whispered. "And you did anyway," I smiled. "You always did things your way." Then, something unexpected happened. She took out a small paintbrush from her bag and dipped it in bright yellow paint. On that same wall, she wrote in neat, shaky letters, "Forgive me." The moment hung in the air. A simple word, but it carried the weight of a lifetime. A new chapter begins. That evening, as we sat outside watching the sunset, Laura said, "Mom, I'm starting a foundation." I turned to her, surprised. "For what?" "For women like you," she said softly. "Women who were betrayed, left behind, but refused to give up." She showed me a small notebook full of sketches, ideas, and goals. The title on the first page, The Second Chance Project. She wanted to raise money, share stories, build shelters, not as an apology, but as a purpose. And for the first time, I saw her future, not as a daughter seeking forgiveness, but as a woman creating change. Full circle. Months later, we stood together on a small stage at the opening of the Foundation's first center. Reporters took photos, people clapped, and Laura's voice shook as she spoke. "This is for every mother and daughter who lost their way," she said. "May they find their way back home, like I did." As the applause filled the room, she looked at me in the front row, eyes full of gratitude. I smiled, tears streaming down my face. After so many years of pain, deceit, and silence, we finally stood in the light together. Narrator's closing reflection. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It rewrites its meaning. Pain doesn't disappear. It transforms into strength. And sometimes, the person who hurt you the most becomes the person who helps you heal. Fade out with soft piano and the line on screen. She thought she was breaking me, but together, we broke the chain. Soft ambient music, a slow heartbeat rhythm under gentle piano. The screen fades in on Laura standing before a mirror, adjusting a small gold necklace that belonged to her mother. She takes a deep breath, the kind that means she's about to face something big. It had been a year since the foundation opened, a year since I'd seen my daughter transform from broken to brave. And I'll tell you, there's a certain pride that words can't describe when you watch your child rise from the ashes she created. But sometimes, when people rebuild, they forget to look down. And that's when old cracks start to show again. The foundation's growing pains. The Second Chance Project had become bigger than either of us imagined. There were sponsors, donors, volunteers, even a small feature on local TV. Laura was glowing. She'd become the face of redemption, the symbol of hope. But success has a sneaky way of testing the soul. Late nights, endless meetings. I noticed her phone ringing during dinner, again and again, and slowly that soft smile of hers started turning into something sharper. "You need to rest, sweetheart," I told her one evening. "Mom, I can't. The gala's in 2 weeks. If we get this donor, we can expand to Chicago." Her voice was confident, but her eyes had that old fire, the same ambition that once drove her to ruin. I didn't say anything then, but deep down, I worried the past was whispering her name again. The phone call. 2 nights before the gala, I got a call from a woman named Cynthia, one of the volunteers. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Mrs. Collins, I think you should know. Laura's business partner. He's been taking money from the charity's account. And Laura, she signed off on the checks." My heart froze. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. But when you've lived long enough, you learn that truth has a way of knocking twice. The confrontation. That night, I went to her office. The building was dark except for the light in her room. Laura sat at her desk, papers everywhere, tears running silently down her cheeks. "It's true," she whispered before I even asked. "I didn't steal anything, Mom, but I knew he did. I just didn't stop it. I didn't want to lose the funding," her voice broke. "I thought I could fix it later. I thought if I kept quiet, no one would know." I stood there, a storm inside me. Part of me wanted to scream. Another part wanted to hold her like I did when she was 6 and scraped her knee. "You promised me," I said softly. "You promised you'd never let greed lead you again." She fell to her knees. "I know, Mom. I failed again. I thought I changed. I wanted to change." The lesson returns. I took a deep breath and said, "Redemption isn't proven when people are watching, Laura. It's proven when nobody is." She cried harder, shaking, broken all over again. "What do I do?" she whispered. "You do what's right, even if it costs you everything." Facing the storm, the next day, Laura went public. She called a press conference, no lawyers, no excuses. She admitted what happened, resigned from her role, and took full responsibility. The world was quick to judge. Social media tore her apart. But for once, she didn't run. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, redemption isn't about staying perfect. It's about standing tall in the ruins and saying, "I won't hide anymore." Mother and daughter. Again. That night she came home. No makeup, no camera lights, just her, with tired eyes and a quiet soul. "I lost everything again," she said softly. "No," I replied. "You found your truth again." We sat on the porch, watching the sunset, the same way we used to before the world got complicated. And as the golden light hit her face, I saw peace there, the kind that only comes after surviving yourself. Narrator's reflection. Redemption isn't a straight road, it's a spiral. You keep walking, you stumble, you fall, but each time you rise, you're higher than before. Laura didn't need the world's forgiveness anymore. She'd finally found her own. Music swells. Screen fades to black with the text. True strength isn't never falling, it's standing up one more time, then you fall. Soft rain falls against a window. A slow piano melody begins, gentle, hopeful. The scene opens with Laura sitting by the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass. The camera pans to her mother entering the room with 2 cups of tea. Narration: Mother. It's strange how storms sound different when they're finally passing. They don't roar, they whisper, like the sky itself is sighing in relief. After the fall. The weeks after Laura's public confession were brutal. The news channels wouldn't stop replaying her tearful apology. Some called her courageous, others called her a fraud. She lost the foundation, the board, and most of her savings. But she kept her dignity. And that, I told her, was something no one could take away. You did the hardest thing a person can do, I said one evening as we sat in silence. You told the truth when the lie was easier. She gave me a tired smile. But the truth cost me everything. I shook my head. No, sweetheart. The truth bought you back finding purpose again. Days turned into weeks. Instead of wallowing, Laura began volunteering at a local women's shelter, quietly, without fanfare or cameras. No press, no logo, just her. She cooked meals, helped women fill out forms, listened to stories that sounded all too familiar: betrayal, loss, fear, survival. One night she told me, "Mom, I thought I was building something big before. But this feels real." And in her eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Peace. A candle in the dark. At the shelter, Laura met a woman named Grace, a young mother escaping an abusive marriage. Grace reminded her of herself, terrified, uncertain, but still holding on to a small spark of hope. When Grace hesitated to sign up for counseling, Laura held her hand and said, "You don't have to be ready to heal. You just have to be tired of hurting." Those words would later become the motto for a new program Laura helped create, Lighthouse Circles, weekly small groups for women rebuilding their lives. This time, she didn't lead it from a stage. She led it from a chair, sitting beside them, equal, honest, real. Quiet redemption. Months later, I visited one of those meetings. A small circle of women sat in folding chairs, sipping tea, sharing laughter through tears. Laura spoke softly, not like a speaker, like a friend. "We can't rewrite the past," she said, "but we can stop letting it control the ending." When she finished, there was no applause, just silence, the good kind, the kind that sinks in deep. I stood in the back of the room, my heart swelling with pride. My daughter had fallen, been broken, and still chose to become someone's light. A letter from Grace. One morning, Laura received a handwritten letter from Grace. "Dear Laura, you may not remember what you told me that night, but it saved me. I found my strength again because you believed I could. You gave me more than help. You gave me hope. Thank you for showing me that mistakes don't end us. They teach us how to begin again." Laura cried as she read it, and I think in that moment she finally forgave herself completely. A new dawn spring came again, soft sunlight spilling across the porch, birds returning to sing. Laura started painting again, something she hadn't done since her teenage years. Her canvases weren't about perfection, they were about emotion, hands reaching out, broken chains, rising suns. "You're smiling again," I said one morning. "Yeah," she whispered, "for the first time, I'm not chasing peace. I'm living in it," narrator's reflection. We all fall, but sometimes the fall isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of grace. Laura didn't rebuild the same life she lost. She built a better one, quieter, truer, and full of purpose. Soft piano swells as the screen fades to golden light. She once wanted to change the world, but in the end, she changed hearts, starting with her own. Fade to black. Text on screen. The storm clears not when the rain stops, but when you decide to see the sun again. Scene opens on a slow sunrise over a quiet suburban neighborhood. Birds sing softly as light spills through the window of a modest home. A photo of a younger Laura sits framed on the mantel, smiling, surrounded by women at a community center. Narrator, mother's voice. They say a good life doesn't echo loudly, it ripples quietly, through the hearts it touches. 5 years later. 5 years had passed since Laura lost everything and found herself. The world had moved on. The media stopped mentioning her name, but in small corners of America, church basements, libraries, shelters, her work continued to grow. Lighthouse Circles now had chapters in 3 states. No fame, no marketing, just word of mouth. One woman helping another find her strength. Every circle began with a simple phrase written on the wall: "You are not your scars, you are the one who survived them." And that message spread further than Laura ever imagined. The letter that changed everything. One day, Laura received a letter in the mail, the kind that comes with no return address. "Dear Ms. Parker, I attended one of your meetings last year after escaping an abusive relationship. You don't know me, but you saved me. I'm alive today because you reminded me I was worth saving. I'm now helping others just like you helped me. Thank you for giving us light. A friend you'll never meet." Laura held the letter against her heart, tears welling in her eyes. For the first time she realized her pain had not been wasted. It had become a map for others lost in their own darkness. A new beginning. That summer she invited me to speak at one of her gatherings. I was hesitant. Public speaking was never my strength. But when I walked into that small community hall, I saw about 50 women sitting in a circle. Their eyes were bright. Some were tired, some hopeful, all brave. Laura introduced me. "This is my mother, the one who taught me what grace really means." I stood there, my voice trembling. When Laura was little, I told her something I didn't fully understand until now, that strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from learning how to rise gently. There wasn't a dry eye in that room. After the meeting, a young woman hugged me and whispered, "Your daughter saved my life." And in that moment, I knew. All the pain, the years of struggle, every tear, had led here. Planting seeds. Later that year, Laura and I planted a tree in our backyard, a small oak. She named it Hope. "Every woman who comes through our door," she said, "deserves a place to plant her own hope again." She began giving out tiny oak saplings to every woman who completed her healing program, a symbol of new roots, new beginnings. Some planted them in their gardens, some by the graves of lost loved ones. Some took them to shelters and parks. Soon, hundreds of small oak trees began to grow across towns and cities, a silent forest of survivors. The Book of Grace. 3 years later, a publishing house reached out to Laura, not for a scandal, not for gossip, but for her story. They wanted her to write a memoir. She hesitated at first, afraid it would reopen old wounds. But after much thought, she agreed, not for fame, but for truth. The book was titled Grace in the Ruins: How I Found Light After Losing Everything. It wasn't a bestseller, but it didn't need to be. Those who read it said it felt like a conversation with an old friend. The final line of her book read, "Forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. It's saying, I choose peace over pain and love over fear." Full circle. By the time Laura turned 60, she had become a quiet legend in her town, not the glamorous woman who once stood on stages, but the humble one who walked among broken hearts and reminded them they were whole. She never remarried, but she had family everywhere, the hundreds of women whose lives she helped rebuild. And every year on her birthday, letters and flowers would pour in from across the country. Each note began the same way: "Because of you." Narrator's reflection. I often sit by the oak tree we planted that day, now tall and strong. Its roots reach deep, like her story. Laura taught me, and the world, that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about writing the next chapter with courage and kindness. Soft orchestral music swells as the camera pans to the tree, its leaves shimmering in the sunlight. Some storms break us. Others teach us how to bend and grow stronger. Fade to black. Text on screen. The legacy of grace, dedicated to every woman who chose healing over hate. Opening shot. A quiet morning sun over an old wooden house. The same oak tree, now full and majestic, sways gently in the wind. Birds chirp softly. The screen fades into Laura, older now, silver hair shining in the light, sitting on her porch with a warm smile. Narrator, mother's voice. Time has a way of softening everything. The pain, the pride, even the memories that once burned too bright to hold. And as the years passed, Laura found peace, not in forgetting, but in forgiving. The quiet years, Laura's 60s and 70s were gentle. She lived simply, volunteering at shelters, mentoring young women, tending her garden. She found beauty in the small things: morning tea, the laughter of children, the smell of books. Her once busy life had become still, but her influence quietly echoed through every woman she helped. Whenever she visited a town, someone would recognize her, not from television or the news, but from her kindness. "You helped my sister. My mom said your words saved her. I read your book when I was lost." Laura would always smile and reply, "I didn't save anyone. You just remembered who you were." The letter to her daughter. One winter evening, I found Laura sitting by the fireplace, a blanket wrapped around her legs. She was writing something by hand, a rare sight in the digital age. "It's for you," she said softly. "For after." When I looked confused, she smiled gently. "Don't worry, Mama. I'm not afraid of what comes next. I've made peace." The letter sat sealed on my dresser for months before I could bring myself to open it. After she passed, quietly in her sleep on a spring morning, I finally did. Inside, in her delicate handwriting, were words that will stay with me forever. To my mother, the first woman who ever loved me, and to every woman who ever doubted she could heal. When I was a child, I thought pain was a punishment. Now I know it was preparation. We are not the stories of what broke us. We are the storytellers, the ones who turn wounds into wisdom. If you ever feel lost again, plant something. A tree, a seed, a dream. And when it grows, remember, love was always the root. Thank you for teaching me grace. Love always, Laura. The final circle. A year after her passing, the women from Lighthouse Circles gathered under that oak tree. There were hundreds, maybe more, standing quietly, each holding a small oak sapling in their hands. We shared stories, tears, and laughter. One woman, young, strong, with eyes full of hope, stepped forward and said, "I never met Laura, but because of her, I'm alive today. Her story gave me courage to leave my abuser, and now I help others do the same." Everyone clapped softly. It was then I realized, Laura hadn't just built a charity. She had built a movement, a sisterhood, a living legacy, a legacy of grace. Years later, people still visit the oak tree. They sit beneath it, whispering prayers, or reading Laura's words carved on a small stone at its base. Love is the only chain worth keeping. Sometimes children play around it. Sometimes women sit quietly, finding strength in the wind that rustles through its branches. I often sit there too, older now, remembering her laughter, her courage, her flaws. Because Laura was never perfect, but she was real. And in her realness, she gave others permission to live without shame. Final voiceover, cinematic outro. Soft piano music fades in. Slow camera zoom on the oak tree swaying under golden sunlight. Narrator, softly. Maybe the greatest story any of us can leave behind isn't written in books or carved on stones, but in the hearts of those we helped stand again. Pause. She broke the chain, and in doing so, she set the rest of us free. Screen fades to black. Text appears. The final gift, inspired by true stories of healing.